Why childhood obesity happens. A story of a disrupted body system. This is Amy. Like many kids, she loves sweets and snacks, but doesn't always realize how they affect her body. After waking up, her body begins sending signals that it's time to eat. These signals are controlled by the hypothalamus, which regulates hunger, satiety, and energy balance. When Amy hasn't eaten for a period of time, the stomach releases a hormone called ghrelin. Ghrelin travels through the bloodstream to the hypothalamus, signaling that energy levels are low. This increases the sensation of hunger and promotes food-seeking behavior. In other words, it tells the brain that the body needs fuel and it's time to eat. After eating, the system shifts. The gut releases hormones like CCK and GLP-1, which signal fullness to the brain and slow digestion. At the same time, insulin rises as blood glucose increases, signaling that energy is available and more food is not immediately needed. All of these signals, hunger and satiety signals, converge in the hypothalamus. Here, specialized neurons integrate this information and determine the feeding response. One key pathway involves POMC neurons, which promote satiety. These neurons activate MC4R receptors in the hypothalamus, suppressing appetite and reducing food intake. In contrast, other neural pathways promote feeding behavior when energy levels are low, maintaining a balanced regulatory system. Now let's look at what's happening inside Amy's body as a result of this. Because Amy is consistently eating excess calories, her body enters a state of energy imbalance. This leads to increased fat storage, especially in adipose tissue. But fat tissue is not just sitting there, it is metabolically active and acts like an immune organ. As Amy's fat cells grow larger, they begin releasing fatty acids. At the same time, there are changes in hormones called adipokines. Amy's leptin levels begin to increase, which promote inflammation, and her adiponectin levels begin to decrease, which decreases anti-inflammatory protection. These changes activate Amy's immune system. But instead of helping her, this creates a state of chronic, low-grade inflammation. Over time, this inflammation interferes with how her body responds to insulin. This leads to insulin resistance, which puts Amy at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. So in Amy's case, her diet isn't just affecting her weight, it's actively changing how her immune system and metabolism function.
Amy is like a lot of kids. Her diet includes a lot of processed foods and sugary snacks. But what she eats is doing more than just filling her up, it's changing how her body works. When Amy eats foods high in sugar and unhealthy fats, her body responds by increasing triglycerides and LDL cholesterol, while lowering HDL, the good cholesterol that helps protect her heart. Over time, this imbalance leads to fat buildup in her body and starts to disrupt how her metabolism functions. But the effects don't stop there. Amy's gut is constantly communicating with her brain and immune system. When her diet changes, the signals from her gut change too, sending different messages too. As fat builds up and her lipid balance worsens, inflammation increases. This begins to interfere with normal hormone and neurotransmitter signaling. This means Amy's appetite regulation, metabolism, and even brain signaling become less coordinated. It's becoming a connected network of dysfunction, leaving Amy more tired and drowsy.
Now let's take a closer look at how carbohydrates are affecting Amy specifically. Carbohydrates are one of her body's main sources of energy, but because Amy regularly eats a lot of sugary and processed foods, her intake is much higher than what her body actually needs. And over time, this excess starts to disrupt her normal metabolic balance. When Amy eats foods high in simple carbohydrates, like soda, candy, or processed snacks, those sugars are absorbed really quickly into her bloodstream. This causes a rapid spike in her blood glucose levels. In response, her pancreas releases insulin to move that glucose into her cells. But because this is happening over and over again, Amy's insulin levels stay consistently high. And that high insulin promotes fat storage through a process called lipogenesis. At the same time, these foods don't really keep Amy full, so she ends up eating more throughout the day. So overall, Amy is taking in more calories than she's using, which creates a positive energy balance and leads to increased fat accumulation and weight gain. But for Amy, it's not just about gaining weight, her metabolism is also starting to change. Because her body is constantly exposed to high insulin levels, her cells begin to stop responding properly. This is what we call insulin resistance. So even though insulin is still being released, it's not working as effectively anymore. This disrupts how Amy's body handles glucose and puts her at risk for developing metabolic syndrome. Amy's fructose levels are also high due to the sugary drinks and processed foods. When fructose is metabolized, it increases uric acid levels. This leads to inflammation and oxidative stress, which over time can cause high blood pressure. So overall, for Amy, carbohydrates aren't just providing energy, they're actively driving fat storage, disrupting her insulin regulation, and increasing her risk for serious metabolic disease. So overall, Amy's case shows that childhood obesity isn't just about weight, it's about multiple systems in the body becoming disrupted. But the good news is that with early changes in diet and lifestyle, these effects can be improved and even prevented.